new here, let me really quickly introduce myself. My name is Renee Paulson. I'm a recovering food and sugar addict and also a healthy living and nutrition coach. I myself have lost over 100 pounds, hardcore addicted to food and sugar. Once I figured that out, I also started to figure out tools on how to help myself. I actually wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until last year, which again, if you do have ADHD or you think I might possibly have that, people with ADHD actually with the eating disorder that is very closely associated would be binge eating disorder. And because food addiction and sugar addiction is not in the DSM yet, but that's going to be my life mission, is to make sure that that fucker gets in there. And so it just happens to kind of be this perfect storm. For myself, I really struggled with emotional eating, and I went through this whole gamut of really being attached to food and having that emotional attachment. And then once I realized how much that emotional attachment was really there, and it wasn't just as simple as like, well, just don't eat that when you get stressed. When someone told me that, honestly, I really just wanted to flip them off or like shake them by the neck strongly. It's just not that simple. It's not like, oh, well, when you get stressed, go do other things like work out. Anytime anybody told me to handle it that way, I was like, you suck. You obviously don't know. So today we are going to talk about, again, how to conquer emotional eating in real life terms. Now, if you're like, does this lady really know about emotional eating? I did do Confessions of a Food and Sugar Addict, the live stream. I do them every other Thursday night. And last week I did all talking about all my emotional eating stuff, and not even all of it, but a lot of it. And I did that in just obviously to coincide and to rev up to this. But really just to show like those emotions can be very strong. I literally had a full-on meltdown about not being able to get a McDonald's cheeseburger, which I don't even like. I didn't even, it was just like one of those things. And once I really figured out that those emotions didn't belong there, I was like, wait a second. So it really came down to creating tools and things to help me overcome those emotions, because let's face it, real life happens. Shiznit hits the fan all the time in real life. And if you've like I have children, and I've got a 13-year-old and a 10-year-old, and literally for most of the morning and yesterday, I heard, Mom, he's touching me. Mom, she put her feet in my face. Blah, blah, blah. Like all these things in real life happen. Death happens. Cancers happen. Our family members get sick. Like real life shit hits the fan. And so learning how to deal with that stress is just going to be incredibly helpful. So either you're not going off the deep end or diving into a pint of ice cream that you melted in the microwave. Speaking from experience. So the first thing I really want to discuss and cover is why our brains really self-soothe, and they do it on purpose when we have emotional stuff. Now, I'm going to say emotions, but this is going to be like an umbrella of emotions. And if you haven't seen Inside Out, the cartoon, you obviously don't have young children like I do. They have the emotions. We're talking anger, sadness, frustration. Stress is a really big one, because a lot of people will just say, I'm very stressed. I feel so stressed. I have stress. And it is stress. And I say the same thing. I feel very stressed. Like I'm so stressed. And that was always my ticket when I would go to the pantry or whatever. Like I'm very stressed, and I just sit there with whatever bag I had, to pretend it's my bag of chips. I don't care for popcorn. I was just, I'm very stressed. And if my husband was ever like a good accountability partner that would be like, maybe we should put that back and deal with our stress other ways. I'm like an angry troll, okay? I'm just but don't you tell me to do that, okay? But our brains really self-soothe in these times. Now, I'm also going to talk a lot about my brain with ADHD, because I am actually finding, and the most common diagnosed, I guess, like age, sex range. Does that make sense? Whatever the case is, a mid-30s to 40s woman being diagnosed with ADHD, because again, we were not diagnosed when we grew up. So we can look like we're paying attention, but most, sometimes could be, sometimes not. But people who struggle with ADHD also really struggle with emotional regulation, meaning that we feel emotions a lot stronger sometimes than other people. Now, this is not an across the board, and I do not want to make a blanket statement, but at least for myself, when I felt emotional or stress, I felt like it was so amplified. And I always felt like maybe something's wrong with me, that like I just feel super stressed, and then I just use that as an excuse. But really what ended up happening, number one, if you have ADHD, your brain lacks dopamine. And so it really kind of wants to go around hunting for dopamine. Hence why struggling with binge eating, food and sugar addiction also, because those things really, that junk food, those things light up your brain. And it's like, wee, I'm so excited, dopamine, and I got my reward, and this makes me happy. Now, we can also do other things to give our brain dopamine, like working out and music and other things like that. But also, when we have a lot of stress in our life, we know that cortisol, we've heard these little catchphrases thrown around. Cortisol, we know, is a stress hormone that when it increases, it actually makes you want to eat more food, right? And it stores fat, and it's just not good. And then the further that you go, when you also get stressed, then your brain also releases something called a neuropeptide Y that also makes you crave fat and sugar specifically. So all of these things that are happening when we feel stressed or angry or upset, those are kind of all, I don't want to say under the same blanket, but they all feel very heavy, very, very heavy emotions. I mean, we're not talking like, I'm an emotional eater, I'm so happy I'm eating. Actually, yes, we are. I'm just kidding. Because I did that too. Like, it was just the range of gamut of emotions. And a lot of times it comes down to boredom, but a lot of times it comes down to, either boredom or those emotions and how you're dealing with it. So what you really want to do, number one, is to start recognizing what your emotional triggers are. Meaning, like, what's happening when you find that you're overeating, or that you're using that excuse to say, I'm really stressed, and so I'm going to go eat a grilled cheese sandwich today, or whatever that is. Where's that trigger? What's going on in that time? What are the emotions that you're feeling? And really stop and check in with yourself at that time. What's triggering me? I feel stressed. Okay, so knowing, all right, I'm stressed. Here's where the trigger of the stress is coming from. Like, this is what the stressful situation is. And then recognizing also normally how you would deal with it. For myself, again, that example was giving that excuse of, I'm stressed, I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm about to start my period, the sky's blue today, whatever it is. Those triggers were that excuse that I would say, well, I'm this, so now I'm going to go eat this. And you can't tell me shit because I'm stressed, and this is how I'm dealing with my stress. Even though it doesn't really help you deal with stress, you're just eating, and then you feel shitty afterwards. So it doesn't really, but in the moment, your emotional brain is not thinking like that, right? So looking at those triggers, what are the triggers that are in there? When you feel triggered, when you feel stressed, angry, upset, sad, are you in control or are you out of control? Because there's two different ways to be. If you're out of control, going and doing anything is not a good idea. Going and driving a car, going and eating food, going and talk to a therapist, that's a good idea. But talking to, if you're fighting with your spouse, that's not a good idea. Like, those types of things, if you're not in control, you need to find a way to get back in control before you move forward. I know that's so much easier said than done, but I got your back, man. I told you, I am the best friend that you always wanted. Okay, so the biggest thing that I can give you as a gift to help you get back in control when you feel like you're about to lose your shit and you're like, "Argh." Okay, stress, angry, sad, whatever that is. There's a thing that I developed. It's called the red balloon trick. Hear me out, and there's lots of different ways that this works, but it really, especially going back, if you struggle with ADHD, or even if you don't and you feel that emotion, you're in your hippocampus. You've got to move into your prefrontal cortex. If you struggle with ADHD or you're diagnosed with ADHD, you already are lacking blood flow in your prefrontal cortex. I hate to tell you. I'm sorry, it's not fair. I don't know why. The prefrontal cortex also helps you with decision making, getting back in control, having that impulse control so we don't go fly off the handle and binge eat or go and use it as an excuse to be like, well, I'm going to dive into a bunch of McDonald's French fries or whatever it is. So the red balloon trick literally goes, I want you, make sure you're not driving a car or walking or doing anything dangerous, that you can literally sit down for a few seconds and just take a few deep breaths. And I want you to take those deep breaths in through your nose and blow them out through your mouth while closing your eyes and visualizing, creating this picture in your brain that you are blowing that stress into the red balloon. Okay, you're going to repeat this and do this 5 times. The breath is going to look like this. Okay, it is not this. My son likes to do this. He likes to do that when he's really mad. It's a flow, blow it out like you're blowing up a balloon, okay? You're blowing that stress, you're blowing it into the balloon. After your 5 breaths are done, you're going to visualize, again, creating that picture in your brain that you are taking that balloon and you're going to let that shit go. And you're going to come back to the problem. Okay, now I'm not telling you that the stress is going away, because that's not realistic at all. But what I'm telling you is that you're going to create, you're going to switch your brain into your prefrontal cortex. You're creating more blood flow and more oxygen in the brain. So it's going to help you get back in control. Now, a few other things that can also help at this time so that you don't dive into that emotional eating and you get back in control of those emotions and you get back in control of feeling like you're in charge of yourself. Because I don't know about you, and if you've ever felt this way, please hit the heart so I don't feel like I'm crazy and belong in the loony bin. But when I've gotten to that point, especially that particular time that I talked about on Thursday night on Confessions of a Food and Sugar Addict, I was completely and totally out of control. You cannot face a situation like that. You're out of control just means like everything's out of control, and then I have the excuse to dive into my emotional eating because I'm out of control. I don't have control over it, so therefore there's the excuse. That's the gateway. That's where it goes into. So taking those few deep breaths and getting back in control of yourself, right? Actionable steps that can help when that stressful time happens. Red balloon trick right out the gate. If you are in the car and you're driving and you're like, listen, I need an actionable step while I'm driving in the car, do it with the red balloon trick just with your eyeballs open. And like, you know, the visualization and the breathing help. It's like a double-edged sword. So if you just did the breathing, maybe do 10 breaths. Well, don't do that if you're going to pass out. But you know what I mean? Like get your breath, get where you're feeling back in control. Or if you are still like in the car and you're totally out of control and you're like, this is not helping, pull over. Pull over, pull off, park your car, do the red balloon trick, close your eyes, visualize, do what you need to do to get back in control. Because, you know, obviously driving a car out of control and an emotional wreck, that's not going to be safe for you. It's not going to be safe for anybody else on the road. So, back in control of the emotions. Other things that can really help with that are listening to music. Depending on what's going on, depends on the music. And especially for me, my music taste is very random. And so it could be Eminem, it could be Chris Webby, it could be Taylor Swift, it could be whatever it is. But using that music to really help ground you and bring you back down. Now, if you're still finding like you're still dealing with this stressful situation, and you know nothing has resolved, obviously, and you're still trying to get back in control, other things you can do. Really start to look at how you can flood your brain with dopamine. Dance, sing, go out and walk. Some people are like, I don't like to walk. When I get upset, I don't like to either, if you want me to be honest. If you want me to be very perfectly honest, one of the things that I like to do is to sing. Sing/scream/rap, depending on what's going on at the time. But that also really helps flood your body, your brain with dopamine. It also helps move that energy around, so it can really kind of help bring you back down to it, again, that place where you feel in control. That is where you really want to get back to, because otherwise your brain is going to self-soothe and like just stick that pacifier in your mouth with the food and just be like, here. And be like, okay, I'm going to self-soothe like this. So getting back in control and really helping with those actionable steps. When you have stressful times in your life and you know, I'm going through battles, I'm going through this shit, this is what's going on. Taking that extra time to take care of yourself is going to be really important. As women, we really tend to take care of everybody else all of the time, and we rarely take care of ourselves. We're usually the last person on the totem pole. And that's got to stop, ladies, man. We need to take our way up, man, for reals, because becomes a habit. And the longer that you do that, the longer you show your family that you are willing to put everybody else's needs before yourself. And we think that maybe that makes us a great mom or a great wife or a great whatever. And honestly, if that person thinks you're great because you're putting yourself last and everybody else in front of you, they need a reality check. And also, that just shows everybody else, well, mom will do it. It'll be on the bottom of the totem pole. Like, don't even worry about it. It'll be she'll do it. She'll handle it always. And then when you lose your shit and you're like, everybody's like, what's wrong? Put yourself first. Do little incremental self-care things. Do a facial. Shave your legs. I don't know. Shave your armpits. Whatever those little self-care things are for you. For me, I usually like to paint my nails, or most of the time I have Bella paint my nails. She wouldn't paint them black though. Little things that don't feel like a huge task. Before, when my kids were younger, painting my nails felt like an impossible task. So in life, those things are going to ebb and flow. But just finding some self-care things that really are going to work for you. Whether that's journaling, whatever, like I said, whatever that is that works for you, but just making sure that during those times you're getting a little bit of extra self-care from yourself. And that always makes us feel a little bit calmer, a little bit more special for trying to really pay attention and take care of ourselves. And that's what it really requires to help yourself through those battles, is really taking care of yourself. And you can do it in a couple ways. One of the best ways when you're dealing with stress and battles, I know that everybody's going to hate this, and I know that you're going to hate this, and I'm really sorry, and I'm going to say it anyway. One of the best ways to really take care of yourself when you're going through stressful times is to make sure you're taking care of your physical and mental health. Mental health I'm not going to say will always come, but is significantly improved when you start taking care of your physical health. I hope I said that right. Your mental health is significantly improved when you start taking care of your physical health. And I'm not just talking about working out, which working out is part of it, but also feeding yourself nutritious food. If you're slamming sugar and you're slamming garbage all the time, or when we're really stressed, we can also undereat. And then when we emotional eat, we just eat garbage on that. That's not going to make you feel good, and it's not going to help you on your mental health either. And the crazy thing is that more people do not realize how much food and the food that we're eating affects our mental health in general across the board. And it's shocking almost. And it was shocking when I started to really look into that and to realize, like, even I ain't perfect, man. I'm telling you, in the last 6 months, you know what I've been looking at? Red dye number 40, because I have ADHD, and both my children have ADHD, and my husband has not been formally diagnosed, but I tell you, I got ADHD. And red dye number 40 is not good for ADHD. So it's working those things on how to take care of yourself. It can make you hyperactive. When you're an adult, it can also make you depressed, make you feel like meh, make you feel apathetic, which my friend taught me that word because I had to look it up. But those things can have a serious effect on your mental health. So when you're looking at emotional eating, it sucks so bad because you're already going through stress and emotions and dealing with real life crap. And then if you give in to that emotional eating and you feed yourself garbage, it just is like that vicious cycle that makes it worse. So part of, recognizing, finding what works for you is just recognizing your triggers, finding what works for you in that moment or in that, time in your life or whatever that part is. And then taking a look at healing in the long term to work through emotional eating for the long term. Number one, I would definitely always recommend getting a therapist or having, someone to talk to through that. That way, when you feel those emotions, you can share with someone what it really truly feels like without the fear of judgment. A lot of times, at least I struggled with that in the past, is being really honest about, if I was really fucking angry about getting that McDonald's, cheeseburger, that felt really embarrassing at that time. It was just like, I don't really want to admit that to anybody. But, you know, healing that long term would be to look at a therapist. Also looking at how you deal with stress and if you've dealt with trauma in the past. A lot of times when people deal with trauma in the past, we find ways to deal with stress way back from then, and then we don't update it ever, or figure out new tools that can really help us. The biggest takeaways that I can give you from this to help you with emotional eating are to recognize those triggers and to find a way to distract yourself in that moment. Excuse me with my burp. That could be taking a walk, going, listening to a song, dancing, free writing, doing the red balloon trick to get yourself back in control so that you can really figure out and help yourself. That red balloon trick, I came up with that years ago, and always, every time I use it, it always works. It's so helpful just to, when you open your eyes and you are like, you feel like you're looking at the problem with a fresh set of eyes, and it hasn't gone, it hasn't shifted, but the way that you're looking at it shifts. And that really is so helpful in overcoming emotional eating, because switching yourself into a different part of your brain is going to be key to making those different decisions, because again, that prefrontal cortex is that impulse control and really helping with that. So that's one of the biggest tools that really helped me, along with, like I said, recognizing those triggers and then just replacing them. Or finding a different workout. A lot of times if I'm super stressed, I'll go do jujitsu. That's also new within the last, maybe, I want to say a little less than a year, as a good stress relief, choking people out. That seems very therapeutical sometimes. But again, it's finding those tools that work for you, the music that works for you, the workout that works for you, the people that work for you, the therapist that works for you, all of those things. Because I could tell you everything that I did till I'm blue in the face, but sometimes that's not going to work for you, but I'll tell you that the red balloon trick works for everybody, because that is based on science. That, and like I said, just dancing and finding a way to really get back in control and to deal with those emotions instead of trying to feel like you're just constantly shoving them down with food. Because the emotions are still there. And then once you shove them down with food, then you feel worse about yourself because you dealt with it. Instead of dealing with the issue with the tools in your tool belt, we dealt with it with food. And that always made me feel worse. Not as bad as I know that some people do feel about that. I know lots of people really beat themselves up very harshly over that. And if you do struggle with emotional eating and you do find that you cave in those times, man, be a little nicer to yourself. Give yourself a little love, because you're dealing with some really hard life battles, and only you know how that feels. And only you know what you need. And what you most of the time need is someone to just say, hey, I got your back and I love you and it's going to be okay and we're going to get through this together. So if you haven't heard that yet today, I got your back. It's okay. I love you. We're going to get through this together. Okay? So just breathe. Don't beat yourself up. We got this. I thank you so much for being here. I really, truly appreciate you and your time and spending this afternoon with me. I'm super excited. Tuesday afternoon live streams are now coming back every single week. And Confessions of a Food and Sugar Addict, I'm thinking about making that every week. Right now it's every other Thursday night. So if you are interested in, maybe we'll just do a little poll or see about that. If you are not a member of the Warrior Tribe yet, I would love to invite you. It's my free community online at reneepaulson.com. I'll put the link in there. And you can just join a group of amazing women that are just like you, that are ready to get back control of their cravings, their weight, and their health for good. So that's where you belong if you're an amazing warrior, which I know you are because you're here and we're best friends. So it's decided. I love you bunches. I hope that you have an amazing afternoon. I always say evening because I'm used to Confessions of a Food and Sugar Addict at night. But Ronnie, thank you. Thank you for being here. And I will see you guys later. Bye-bye.